You know I do them for you.
Oh, hey! Ever wonder what's happening in scenes like this? As a working actor, I want to know. Hi, I'm Nancy Nave. I'm a working actor in film and television and a career coach for actors. I had a chance to interview an intimacy coordinator who is responsible for scenes just like this. Jazzy Ellis is an intimacy coordinator for the film and television industry, but she's also a SAG award-winning stunt performer. And with over a decade as an actor, she has many credits to her name, including all these film and TV shows that the world is familiar with. And she's my friend. She shares the secrets of what's really happening on set when filming these steamy scenes. So let's jump into it with Jazzy Ellis.
I'm happy that intimacy coordinators are there to be an advocate for the actors. So an intimacy coordinator is an advocate for actors. They're the liaison between the actors and production, and they're also the choreographer for any movement that needs to be involved in the scene.
How are they getting these shots where it really looks real?
I mean, sometimes they are physically touching and like right on top of each other. Sometimes they're not offset. Sometimes they are directly on top. And that's when we use, well, we always use barriers, but that's when you see the benefit of the barriers. So this is a physical barrier that's separate. It's actually a Pilates ball. It's a slightly deflated Pilates ball. And I like to use it because when the actors are bouncing, it mimics the bounciness of real action.
So they're not bouncing against each other per se.
They're bouncing against the ball, so they'll never be in contact with each other. This is a physical barrier that's placed between them. And I actually use this, not this one, but
I'm like
holding it against my face. This is brand new. I used a Pilates ball like this one for raw piece for the actors there, and they loved it. They were like, "Oh, this makes it so much easier." And I'm like, "Good. I'm glad that it's working for you guys."
Is it taped to one actor, or is it just loose?
No, they place it where they need to for that particular position, so that there's no contact. So we rehearse it to see where there might be contact, and then the ball is placed in that area.
Okay, because it's like a dance. I mean, there's a rhythm, right?
We had a sheet that like wrapped around it.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
As the sheets that they were using in the bed that they were in. So you couldn't see it.
And so what are they wearing? Let's dive into that, because I'm like, it looks like they got nothing on.
For vulva owners, I use a camel knot. It's like a silicone piece of fabric that you just put on your genital area if you're a vulva owner. And the silicone makes it so that if anything's rubbing against you, you don't feel it at all.
Oh, okay. Is it thick?
So
hold it sideways.
It's thick.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If I'm on this side, I can't feel touch.
Now, is that a stick on, or what is that?
It's stick on. And if at any point the stickiness wears away, I have this skin color tape, and I have it in multiple colors. So this is like a dark brown, and this is, the lightest color. But I would just reinforce it with the tape. And then this is the barrier that you wear on your person, and then this you put over that barrier. So it has little stickies.
Oh, okay.
On the top part. This goes on the pubis area, and then this around the back. I mean, you can cut this. We usually cut this.
Oh, and it's a heart.
Yeah, it's cute, right? And then it sticks on to the back, and this makes it look like you're nude when you're not. So this is called a Shibu.
A Shibu.
I think that's the brand name. This is called the Shibu, and let me show you the Hibu.
Oh, there's a Hibu. I get it. Shibu, Hibu.
For penis owners. So you see there's with the Shibu, it's flat.
Okay.
And then there's a little pocket here instead.
Okay.
So this same stickiness, and then the same heart on the back. And then there's not a lot of really easy male barriers, but I like to use bra inserts.
Okay.
So this is a silicone bra insert, and then this is like a cotton padding bra insert. So what I do is I just go in with the big bag of stuff to talk to the penis owning actors, and I'm just like, you test it out and see what works for you. I'm going to show you how to put them on, and then you can see what works for you. If they need help, then I'll help them. So the barrier goes inside, and then they put it on.
Okay. And
So it works in the same way that like if there's any contact on this side, they won't feel it on this side.
so all the different garments that they wear, do they come in different sizes or are they just one?
Yes. So the ones I'm using for the demonstration are actually the smaller, all of the smaller sizes because they're not used as often. But yeah, they come in whatever size you need, as long as we're called in early enough to order the correct size. So sometimes the sizes run out online. I'm ordering them from online. So
Okay.
yeah.
So there's a maker of these garments. You're not making them yourself.
There is a maker of these garments, but if for any reason I cannot get garments, and it's great that you're bringing this up for me, we actually fashion our own out of yoga mats and fabric and tape.
Okay, so getting creative.
Yes. So we would cut a yoga mat into this shape, put some fabric over it, and the yoga mat would act as the barrier.
Mhm.
So in the same way as these silicone pads are the barrier, the yoga mat would be that barrier. And then we put the fabric over it. That's the skin color of the performer. And then we'd use this skin color tape.
Okay, so you're perfecting your sewing skills.
I am a great sewer. I can make whatever is needed. Oh,
Excellent. Well,
you
that
can cover that up? I gotcha. Yeah, there's an intimate costume designer in New York, but
well, especially like if they're non-union and they don't know what's coming, maybe you need a Shibu or Hibu in your shoot bag.
I would also recommend that. So like Shibu and Hibu, these are just strapless thongs, right? So you can order your own. They're on Amazon.
Oh,
They don't have
okay.
to be with the brand name Shibu Hibu. If you find another brand that works better for you, you can get that. Make sure you get the skin color that is closest to yours. That helps to build the illusion of nudity when you're
Mhm.
not, because you're wearing a strapless thong, right?
Right. So it's almost like wearing a bathing suit or
Exactly.
so do they have to
But it
do
does help.
like personal grooming or
You don't have to, but it does help if you are groomed in the areas where the tape is, or
uh-huh.
else it might hurt to come off.
So what happens if it comes off during the scene? Does it stop?
It's not,
Oh, okay.
but we have verbal ways of stopping. Like there could be a code word that we use, and we can make up physical ways. So I had an actor work out that she wanted to do this when she wanted to stop, and I stopped when she did that. And the director's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "She gave me the signal."
Mm. Right, because it's not just for it might be that in the moment she doesn't feel safe or something is making her
It could be
uncomfortable.
for any reason. There doesn't have to be a reason. Even if they just need a break, they can take it.
So talking about the physiological aspects of human beings being together like that, what happens if I would point to the human with the penis, either having an erection or some kind of excitement. I'm assuming they have to stop.
We stop and take a break. Yeah, give a moment. And, attention doesn't have to be put on the penis owner. No one needs to know why we stopped. I might tell the director, "Oh, I'm just going to go get them some water and some mints." In that time, it's calmed down.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, actually, I'm glad you said mints because I know even like when you're in acting class and you're not in an intimate scene, but you're in each other's faces, a mint is good.
Yeah. And I like to know like what the actors' favorites are, so I get the brands that they like.
Yeah, that's why you're good at what you do. Like you're detailed. How in the world did intimacy coordinators become a thing?
So we came out of the Me Too movement. So many abuses and abusive behaviors had become normalized in Hollywood and in film and TV, and I guess entertainment in general, because it's also in the music industry. There were abuses that were finally announced to the public. There were people who were already working on their PhDs on the topic of intimacy and intimate scenes, and those people got their roles started in movies. Although it's a position that's been introduced to film and TV, it's still not required for every intimate scene, which is sad. I want it to be required. I just like, whether or not you think you need one, it's helpful in moments that you don't think will pop up. So,
Right, because so much of being an actor is about being in the moment and that improvisation that we're so used to that when we're put into a scene like this, how can that put us in a position of either being uncomfortable or even dangerous?
right. And there's so many different like power dynamics with, like, there's a hierarchy when you go to set. Like, as a stunt performer, I was told not to talk to people unless people talk to me first.
Mm. Mm.
Like that
Yeah.
hierarchy of like,
Yeah.
those people have power and you don't, so be quiet. It's the same with acting. You go into a set and you feel like you need to bow down to the director when you're the talent who's going to bring this work to life. Intimacy can be anything from nudity to hyperexposure, and hyperexposure meaning, let's say we're working with a Muslim woman who has her hijab, like the scarf that covers her head.
Mm-hmm.
That's an intimate piece of cloth that's covering her, and her hair would therefore be an intimate part of her body that
Right.
needs to be added to the conversation.
Right, because that's something that I don't think a lot of people take into account is they think nudity and sex versus a lot of the cultural and ethnic type things that come into play for actors coming in from all over the world, and they all have their different boundaries.
Exactly. And so it's my job to advocate for those boundaries. Well, first of all, to converse with the actor about those boundaries and to make sure that they know what their own personal boundaries are and to bring those to light. Because no matter what you're working on, you're going to have those pretty much the same boundaries as you go from project to project. Mm-hmm. And it's good for you to acknowledge that before you get that audition, like, oh, we're going to need you to do this. Well, am I okay with that?
Right.
Or am I letting this paper decide for me what I should do?
Right, because you don't want to agree to something up front and then change your mind because you had thought it through.
I've always been very interested in safety and how to do things and leave the same way that you came in. I would never want for an intimate scene to be the reason that causes an actor or any crew member trauma. I want them to come in and leave in a more positive way. Well, hopefully we're called on early in the project. Hopefully we're called on during pre-production. It usually doesn't happen that way, but we're trying to encourage that to happen. And if that does happen, then we can be involved in every aspect, from the planning to the casting to, like, what you would see on your audition form, all the way through post-production. If we were called early, we talk to the entire cast and crew. We make sure that they read the segment that we're working on in the script. And if they have any kind of triggers that were brought on by the script, I encourage them to not be in the closed set for that day and to bring on someone else from their department who is more able to deal with that content. Also, I talk with a director about their vision and how much nudity do they want, how much exposure, what kind of positions, what kind of simulated sex acts. And notice I said simulated sex acts because we don't do real sex. There is no genital contact ever for union projects. Like, we're not pornography. We are, storytellers, and for union projects, there's never any real sex.
Yeah, and that's good to say, right? Because some people are like, there's no way that that's fake.
It has to be fake. Yeah.
Yeah, because
doing a good job.
Well, that's another question I have for you, because it's not just between the actors and the director. How does the crew get involved? Because they have to get the shot, they have to get the lighting, they have to get the sound. So are they involved, or they're just kind of told after the agreement of here's how the shot's going to go? Like, how do they get involved?
So the heads of department are in the first meeting with the intimacy coordinator, and there's a conversation around what's needed from everybody. The first meeting before that meeting is with the director to get their vision and to understand their level of exposure and nudity that they are wanting and what kind of simulated sex acts that they need, and whether or not they talk to the actors that they hired themselves. If the actors have already been cast, it's good to know what the director has already told them and what they have already agreed to, because that's not necessarily going to stay the same once we start talking about the nudity writer, which is the contract that is between the production and the performer of what they're agreeing to in the scene. We talk to wardrobe to figure out, based on the actor's boundaries, what can you provide in terms of garments or in terms of clothing to cover the areas that they want covered. Every department is involved.
And when you're talking about triggers, I mean, everybody has their own personal traumas and history and background, and some people don't want to be involved in it for whatever reason, right? So they have to be given some sort of out. When they say it's a closed set, who's on set?
So closed set is a general term for all of the essential crew members. So the people who are necessary to make that scene work can be there. They don't necessarily need to be in the same room, but they need to have access to the monitor usually and to be within like shouting range. So on Rob Peace, the film that I was intimacy coordinator on with Chiwetel Ejiofor, we had a room with the actors and the director who was female. And part of the contract with one of the actors was that she has a female director in the room.
Oh, okay.
Female, not just director, female videographer.
Okay.
So the only people in the room while they were in their moment was that director. Myself, I was off to the side. Was the videographer. I was off to the side with the director, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and the script supervisor watching our private monitor. And then there was another room with a closed monitor, meaning anyone who got permission from either the director or the actors could see that monitor. So wardrobe got permission and makeup got permission to see that monitor. And then the AD and sound were in the other room, but they couldn't see anything.
Okay.
So it all depends on what's necessary for that scene and what the actors agree to, because only who the actors agree to can see any of the monitors. Every other monitor is completely shut off.
Okay, interesting. Because I'm like, I'm assuming Crafty isn't like walking around,
No.
with a tray, all the different people just kind of hanging out during the scene, waiting for themselves, for the cut till they go right back in. So
And even
that's good.
between takes, the actors are covered up. So I hand the actors robes, or wardrobe hands them robes, and then only after they're covered up can anyone come in to talk to them about what they need for the next take.
Yeah, because that helps to protect them, right? To protect themselves, their bodies, their self-esteem, mentally, emotionally. Even though they're like, well, they're going to see it on screen. Well, it's a totally different thing when you're not acting anymore. You're yourself, right?
And what's on screen is only what they've agreed to. What's in person is everything.
Right.
What's on screen is what they've agreed to, and that's why I'm in the room to the side with the monitor, because I'm watching and making sure that nothing comes on screen that they said they didn't want on screen.
Okay. Yeah,
then it would be my job to tell the script supervisor, hey, can you make a note that the camera went a little too low below the waist? She didn't want that.
Yes, to make sure that there's no oopsies, right? And then they have to either take care of it in editing, or it's just now it's captured. It's somewhere, and you don't want anything like that leaking. So take me through the blocking, the choreography of movement during these intimate scenes, because it's not just, hey, you walk up to the bed, you fall over, and then you go into the scene. I'm assuming there's a lot more to that.
Yeah, and like I said before, hopefully you have more time. I usually don't get a lot of time, but what I've coordinated thus far, I've had at least an hour of rehearsal right before the scene. And so I learn what the director wants and what positions they want. And I ask if the actors are okay with that position. It's usually already in their writer, but sometimes the writer is very general. And so it leaves it open to like whatever we decide on the day.
Okay.
And then I offset the performer. So let's say it's one performer on bottom, one performer on top, to make it so that even though they're already wearing their barriers, I also try to offset so that maybe it's a leg against leg instead of
full on
direct
right
contact when it's not needed, and it can give the same look for the camera. It's all about playing with the camera angles, because also the performers don't even need to be touching to make it look like they're having simulated sex.
Okay, and based on like where the camera is, or something blocking a certain body part.
There's all sorts of tricks. And the thing is, if an actor has a lot of boundaries, don't let that hold you back from the story that you want to tell, because all of those boundaries can be upheld. And there's so many tricks that we can do with the camera, with barriers, with, different angles. spacing, choreo, like we can make it look like what the director wants without traumatizing or re-traumatizing a performer.
So people who are producing films and writers, and they go into these intimate scenes where they're trying to show passion or love or violence or whatever it is that scene is about, and having them have an open mind when they go to cast it, realizing that they don't have to have what's on the page, but there's other ways of capturing. Is that part of your job, is to kind of show other options for them versus what's on the storyboard?
That's exactly my job. And that's something that I had to do on Raw Piece. The director had one idea, but because he brought me on so late in the game, we had to go a different route. And he was okay with what we finally captured, but it had, there were some gears that needed to shift in his mind. But the thing is, the earlier you bring us on, the more that we can help you get your vision. So let's say you are a director and you have this vision for a scene and you really want the nipples of all the women to show. You need to put that in the casting notice.
Yep.
Must be willing to show nipples. You won't do that for the audition. You won't do that for a callback. But when it comes on the day, if that's what the director wants and he's known from the beginning, then you need to bring in the performer who's willing to do that. If you end up hiring a performer who's not willing to do that, you cannot force them to do that, no matter what your vision is. If you want them to show nipples and they don't want to show nipples, maybe we need to get prosthetic breast.
Yeah.
Like there's things to do, but you need to think earlier in the process and know that you're hiring the actors who are willing to do specifically what you want.
What happens if they change their mind?
And
something happens between
and
booking and shooting, and they're no longer open to it.
Consent is revocable. So what that means is the director will either have to be willing to change the idea for the scene, his vision for the scene, or a recasting has to happen. SAG-AFTRA has a set of standards and protocols for the use of intimacy coordinators. And with that, you need 48 hours after the writers are signed before you can shoot anything. So if you recast, they need to wait another 2 days. Well, they need to recast, that's probably going to take a few days, right? And then after an agreement is made, they need another 2 days to shoot.
For us as actors, it's not something we enter in lightly, right? It's not like, yeah, I'll do it. And then you have all these reservations already in the back of your mind. It's like, no, you have to be committed that I said yes because I want to do it, not because.
And that's why we give the 2 days. I mean, maybe it should be longer. I don't know. But I think 2 days after you've gone through the negotiation process, you've signed the contract, you've talked with your agents about what will help your career, what will help you and what you feel comfortable with. You have another 2 days. And then once you get to set, no matter what point in the process, you could have already started the scene, you could have already started doing something. If at any point you are not comfortable continuing, you can revoke consent. And I will be there to make sure that no one does anything that you don't want them to do.
Right, because saying no in Hollywood, on films, it's, people see that as kind of like the death blow to your career, right? Like, I mean, you really don't want to say no to anything. When you're on set, you feel this pressure to please, right? Please everybody, please the director, please the producers, please, everybody who's on set, because you're the focus of attention. And if you say no, that changes the plan, right? Not even just in intimate scenes, but in everything, right? Once we change our mind or we don't agree, it becomes, you're the squeaky wheel, right?
Yeah. And that's the culture we're trying to change, right? Like we were working through such toxic behavior and toxic power structures. And that's what we're trying to change. And that's why, well, I don't know if that's why, but it's a great thing that intimacy coordinators are their department heads. So they're not just someone who comes on and like helps out. No, they're their own department and they have that power to talk with all other departments and coordinate however need be to make things happen.
So you advocate basically for the actors. Is that a good?
Over anything. So if it's like a push and pull between, do I listen to the director and what he wants in his vision or protect the actors? I'm going to protect the actor over anything. I will get fired or I will quit before ignore an actor's boundaries.
Which is why I think this is perfect for you, because I know how strong of a person you are. That's how I was like, yeah, you got to be willing to tell the director no. And I'm like, yeah, Jazzy can do that.
I mean, even in like, the query emails that I get from productions to ask me to come work for them, sometimes I notice how a director is talking and
Mhm.
how they're not flexible. And I just like, it's a red flag for me. It's like, you're saying you want this and that you're not willing to change. Like, what if you hire someone else? This is only a week before the shoot. And how do you know that your actors want this? Have you talked with them? Like, there's just a lot of red flags. And I'm just like,
Right. And
I'm going to fight for these actors.
yeah, they're almost kind of like, we need to hire an intimacy coordinator just to have her on set, but let's have
Yeah.
her in the corner and she can sign the papers and said she was there. Right. And it's like, no,
They
I'm
get
actually going to
that.
do my job. Most times the women are the ones that are getting the brunt of the exposure, right? It's more focus on her than the male, and that's just the way it's always been. So it's good to know that there's somebody there to help her to keep her boundaries, because it's so easy in the moment to be like, okay, let's just get the shot. I don't want to be a troublemaker, right? You don't want to make any fuss about it. Let's just push forward. And then once it's over, it's forever, right? Film is forever and it's there, and you can't take it back now.
I'll also say, so intimacy coordinators are on the actor's side. Well, I mean, we're on all the sides, but I consider my main job to protect the actor. As an actor, I would say have your agents and managers know your boundaries as well, because they're the ones who are going to be in conversation, like for the nudity writer contract for you, because you'll be working, like you'll be on set doing your non-intimate scenes, and this conversation is happening for you. Or that's what happened with my actors. I was talking with their reps instead of them, so their reps knew exactly what they wanted, and then I just double checked with their actors when they were done with the day.
Right, because it also happens with like series regulars who are hired in, say, season 1, where their character doesn't have to really entertain any of this type of scene, but then season 2, the writers get creative and they're like, well, what if that character did this?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a boundary, right? They don't
Yeah,
necessarily know your boundary, but your agents know your boundary. And
exactly.
now we get into the negotiations part, right? And start learning how to creatively shoot something that may not necessarily be open to the actor. There was a time where it's been noted where an intimacy coordinator was there and an actor was kind of upset about it. There's no more spontaneity. There's no more improvisation. So talk about that a little, because I'm curious what happens if somebody departs or goes off of the coordination that was originally planned.
Well, if you start improvising without your partner knowing, that's not consensual. If you want to improvise, the way to do that would be to talk about each other's boundaries and limits, and to talk about what areas you'll play with. So
Okay.
let's say an actor doesn't want her buttocks touched or her breast tissue touched. Then if she gives the consent to play with the arm area and there's no choreo for that, but they just know, let's stay in the arms or stay around the waist, and that's the only areas, they can improvise that, but that's still with the knowledge of boundaries.
Okay, so it's not like improvisation is shut down. It's just these are the safe zones that you can play on, you can touch,
Right.
and I'm okay with that, and vice
Mhm.
versa, right? On both sides.
Right.
So it's
And
not it's not a stiff performance. They still can move and explore, but they're in the safe zone.
mhm. But the reason why I like choreo so much is that it's going to be the same for camera each time. So
Hmm.
if you know what you're doing and you know where you're moving, it'll just make the process run smoother, and you won't have to be doing each position for long. These scenes are hard.
Yeah.
These scenes are a workout, a lot of them, so the more choreo you have, the better, or the more, streamlined it is for camera, the better, and for your partner, the better, because it's really physical.
Yeah, yeah, because anytime, and you would know this, right? Anytime you shoot any kind of physical scene, whether it's a sport or a movement, in order to keep continuity and to understand like what's actually happening in the scene, the progression of the scene, you've got to know what you're shooting.
Hmm.
So instead of just
Exactly.
shooting it over and over and changing the camera, maybe you're just getting pieces of it.
Right.
Guess it sounds like if in the moment that scene is not working for one or both of the actors, your job is to
try to find a way to artistically hold it together and maybe come up with ideas on how to shoot that scene.
Yep. Yeah, there was one scene I was working on where the actress didn't want her lower body exposed at all, but the sheet kept moving down. And so wardrobe was afraid to do anything. Set deck was like not allowed in the space anymore. So I was just like, would y'all mind me using my tape, and I'll just tape it here and we'll see how that works. And it worked. So
is it different to be on that side, to almost be part of the crew now, working with the actors? Is it kind of neat to be on that side and see on the other side of it versus being the actor?
it's very different. Yeah.
Do you feel more powerful?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like almost superhero-ish, like more so. I feel more like a superhero as an intimacy coordinator than as a stunt performer.
Yeah, I would say that. So like I'm a mom, right? I have 3 kids. So I would feel like I'm protecting, like I'm, don't touch my babies. These are mine. And I can see that kind of mama bear in you coming out if anybody stepped, even too close to their boundaries.
Exactly. SAG-AFTRA is trying to streamline the process for us, and they've already, we're on
Because
our way.
you've gone through a full training program, right? There's like an organization now that has their proven training steps and things on how you would
That's the word.
intervene.
They're accredited through SAG-AFTRA.
So for non-union and actors who don't have agents or any kind of representation, how would you direct them if they were considering doing a film or a show without any protections whatsoever?
Whether it's union or non-union, if there's not an intimacy coordinator on set, you can still uphold your own boundaries. And it's harder because there's the power dynamic and there's not help there physically in person. But as long as you know the boundaries that are yours, and you are comfortable just saying no. No is a sentence. You don't have to give an explanation. If there's something you don't want to do, just say no. Can we try this instead? I'm comfortable with this. I'm a liaison. I'm an advocate, but I'm not you. Right. You have the power over your body. My job is to give you your autonomy so that you can keep it and run with it. Right. It's your body. You control that. So make sure you don't give that power to anybody.
When I'm on set and you're requiring me to do this scene, let's discuss other ways that we might shoot it. Especially if you're non-union and you don't have representation, you're probably in the newer actor realm and you're not really quite sure where the power, where the power is, right? They hired you and you don't want to get fired, but you're on set. And so giving actors that permission to speak up and say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with that. Let's shoot it a different way, or let's talk about in a very diplomatic way, right? In a respectful way, is to save the scene itself, but to talk about other ways that they might go about it versus saying yes, right?
I guess a little tip, the physical contact boundaries that I like to, like the conversation around the physical contact boundaries that I like to have is using red light, yellow light, green light, like point to the places on your body that you're comfortable with being touched. So like this would be green, this would be green. For me, this would be yellow. Down here would be red. Like, and you would have that conversation with the person that you're doing the scene with and with the director. And that's how you learn each other's boundaries. Yeah. So you can still keep each other safe.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, because instead of saying yes and no, well, there's some yellow areas, right?
Those yellow you would have a conversation.
Right. And I mean, this extends even to like acting class, right? Not that in acting class we're really doing those kind of scenes, but there might be, kissing or hugging, or even you might even be doing somewhat of a violent scene that could trigger, right? So in those moments, all actors need to advocate for themselves in that, with their scene partner saying, I'm comfortable with this and I'm not comfortable with that, but I really love the green, yellow, red. I think that's great. I think that's something that acting teachers need to be talking about more, because even in acting class, we're told go do the scene, but we're not really told make sure you respect each other's boundaries, right? That's just kind of a given once you've been in acting long enough. But in the beginning, if you're a new actor working with a seasoned actor, you still don't want to, you can still feel the power shift there.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So I was talking about the dynamic as if it was only the actor and director, but it's also, you know, the A-listers and the new actors, or the A-listers versus the day player.
Right. I think people think that in order for you to make it in this business, you got to do everything, right? You just got to be yes, 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 and show everything and do whatever. And that's not true.
Nope.
You just have to be a really great actor and then advocate for yourself and fight for what you want to get the scene right, right?
When a casting offer is sent out, it should include the required simulated action and the level of nudity, because like I said, directors might already have an idea of exactly the amount of nudity and simulated sex that they want. So if any aspect of it for that scene is required, they have to put it in the casting. And then proposed simulated action, or the level of nudity. So if anything that they may want that could require a conversation, they need to put that in there too. The direct language from the script that describes the simulated sex and the moments of nudity, so the context needs to be in there. And then any additional details about the director's vision. So if you don't have that, I would say feel free to call the casting office and ask for more specifics.
And it's weird. I mean, once you get your first few films or TV shows, and you're like, this is it. My career's taking off. This is gonna really do it. I'm skyrocketing. And then you go home after you shoot your scenes, and then life continues the way it was before, and you're like, why did I do all that? And nothing's changed. But yet, if you were in one of these scenes, now you've given more than you probably wanted to, not understanding what it was that you were gaining from it, right? So I always just say, be careful. And like you said, know your boundaries up front. Don't wait till somebody gets to your boundary and then you address it, because sometimes you don't even know what your boundaries are until it's upon you, right?
The script says to include any intimate thing like kissing or simulated sex. My recommendation is don't stage it or improvise it. Just don't do it. Put a placeholder there. So if it's a kiss, instead maybe do like a longing look.
Like a feeling, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're actors. We can figure it out, right?
Yeah, there's nothing worse in an audition though than a fake kiss to camera. You're like,
that's really bad.
Take an audition class. Don't do that.
So you're not required ever to be nude in an audition or callback. Do not take off your clothes for an audition or callback. They might ask for you to wear a swimsuit or something that's covering the areas that would normally be considered nudity, but you would never have to show frontal nudity or lower body nudity for auditions. Like, don't take your clothes off for auditions. If you have an intimate audition in person, make sure there is someone other than the director and casting director in the room. Like, make sure there's more than just you two in the room during your reading. And that's a safety thing. And be okay with saying no if there's anything you're not comfortable with.
Intimacy coordinators isn't just the knowledge that you have for advocating for actors and advocating for yourself, doesn't just stop on set. It's everywhere, especially in the audition, because a lot of times, you know, auditions can be sketchy. There's so many interesting times where I've had an audition. I'm like, is this where the audition was? You know, and looking around, a couple times I've gone in, peeked in real quick, and there's a whole bunch of actors in there. I'm like, okay, this is real. But I'm like, if it's in a house, go home. You know, I'm like,
they're not allowed to have castings in hotels anymore.
Okay, so where can people follow you on social media? Where's the best place that you post?
On social media, my personal account is at Jazzy Ellis on Instagram, and my professional account is Intimacy for Film and TV on Instagram.
Okay, great. So is that where they would go if, say, they're like, we need an intimacy coordinator? How do we get a hold of Jazzy Ellis? That's where they go.
Any of these accounts, you'll find me, and I will interview immediately.
Excellent. I just want everybody to know to go and check out your IMDb page, because that's impressive. That's why I was like, wow, for you to be in the industry for what, 11 years, that's a lot of work that you've been doing. And I always say, go check out who you're getting information from. I'm like, don't just take somebody's word for it because they say who. I'm like, go check them out. It's okay. We can snoop a little, you know, at the same time, whenever you check out somebody's IMDb, you know, their rating goes up a little.
Thank you for looking at my IMDb.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for joining us, and I'm so excited. And Wow, I have a million questions about stunts and everything else that you do. We'll save that for another time, but they can leave comments in the comment section for questions, and I'll make sure that you get them, and that way we can answer them.
Thank you so much, Nancy.